This clip has been making its way around the internet for the last few hours for a very good reason indeed, as it shows a CBS News journalist argue that mid-century Germany engaged in a massive, brutal cull of its Jewish population not because it had been taken over by an authoritarian regime of nationalist socialists, but rather because of free speech. Okie dokie then. That one's new. I don't think I've heard that one before. Free speech caused the Holocaust. It is, if nothing else, an original take, I will say. Although, it actually makes sense. Not the free speech caused the Holocaust part, but that she would think so. Because we've been talking a fair bit about Weimar Germany on this channel on and off recently, and this is simply just a blank spot in the average progressive mind. See, to your average left-winger, and this CBS News anchor is almost certainly one of them, 1918 came around, the First World War ended, and then there was simply a period of 10 to 20 years of nothing happening. And then, World War II, all of a sudden. I'll explain. It just kind of happened, bro. Now, that's not quite true, of course, as we will get to over the course of this video, but first, let's have a quick listen to this clip, shall we?
Well, he was standing in a country where free speech was weaponized to conduct a genocide, and he met with the head of a political party that has far-right views and some historic ties to extreme groups. The context of that was...
Right, so that was the important part, after which this gentleman here proceeds to shut her the hell down because, well, she's saying some pretty ridiculous stuff, honestly. And the only way you could possibly believe this is, again, if you've kind of just spaced that period of German history that we call the Weimar Republic. So this is in relations to J.D. Vance going to Europe and yelling at a bunch of European politicians that desperately needed yelling at. After which he went off to meet with all of the leaders of the major German political parties, which includes AfD, Alternative for Germany or Alternative für Deutschland. This is of course being called a far-right German political party, the evil far-righters, the misogynists, the sexists, the ultra-conservatives led by a woman. It's weird how often that's the case. It's strange. There's so many far-right parties being led by women these days. It's very odd, frankly, but anyways. So, the party she mentioned that had, ties to extremist organization and the weaponization of free speech and so on was, of course, AfD. Alright? A country that has weaponized free speech to carry out a Holocaust, in reference to the AfD. Who's currently weaponizing free speech in Germany? Oh, that's right, the established political parties that are trying to ban AfD. In other words, trying to deprive them of their free speech whilst maximizing their own, or more correctly, monopolizing it. Yeah, if you are having a conversation in which one group is going, I want to say whatever I want, and you've got another group saying, I don't like that, I'm going to threaten you with the power of the state to shut you up, one of them is anti-free speech and anti-democratic. I'll let you take a stab at which one. The AfD is not a far-right party, and it is not a Nazi party. They span off from the Christian Democrats, and conservatism is pretty much the exact opposite of Nazism, as Nazism in the form of National Socialism was, of course, in and of itself a revolutionary movement. Now, let's talk about that in the respect of Weimar Germany, shall we? The 10 to 20-year-old memory hole that most progressives have. Weimar Germany was not a particularly stable state. In fact, if we look at a list here, there was a lot of uprisings and/or planned uprisings during the Weimar Republic. pretty much constant ones, frankly. Both communist and national socialists, so international socialism and national socialism, both arguing quite vehemently and often with fists, clubs, and guns in the streets about who should take over command of Germany. This was also a period of extreme progressivism, which I can't actually show you this, but if you go back to the Internet Archive and you search for a book by the title of Voluptuous Panic, The Erotic World of Weimar by Mel Gordon, you are going to be sent to a free version of a book that gives you a little bit of an insight into how Weimar Germany was like, into what it was like more correctly, and you're going to start to understand why the Germans as a major population were looking at, a major uprising to once or twice a year, plus things that I am literally not even allowed to talk about on YouTube. I shit you not. The stuff in this book are, well, YouTube would not like it at all. There's some heavy-duty shit in there. But anywho, that largely was the reason why the average German looked at and decided, wow, look at that funny-looking man over there with a little mustache. He seems to be onto something. And then they elected his ass. Now, I want to point out as well, when we're talking about the weaponization of free speech here, okay, so the answer must be stricter controls on speech, right? In fact, this has been a recent thing too, where Germany has passed countless laws cracking down on free speech. Indeed, there was even a 60-minute interview, I think literally yesterday, showing German police raiding an apartment because somebody had been saying naughty things on the internet. Because, well, this is how you stop the rise of fascism, right? No. Weimar Germany, as we've talked about now, is an extraordinarily politically unstable nation, and it had a lot of laws regulating speech. Hitler himself, of course, was slapped with multiple restrictions and various, orders to go to jail and shut up and so on, and it didn't really work. See, restricting free speech doesn't actually stop the speech. It drives it underground. It drives it into a more extreme direction. It creates echo chambers that then bubble up and get more and more extreme. The longer you ignore these bubbles, the stronger they grow, not weaker. This too is actually one of the genuine problems with AfD, by the way. AfD has been kept out of power for so very long now that the party is of course growing slowly more extreme. They are seeing the problems that are happening and they are making first the argument, okay, mass immigration is a problem, we've got to do something. And then over the years, as it gets worse and worse and worse and worse, and there is still no recourse or any remedy made by the state, they get more extreme. Okay, we're going to have to start deporting them and so on. The longer you keep these parties down and the problems don't go away, the solution is going to get more extreme, for the simple reason that the problem is getting more extreme. Hey, there is an amazing movie called Look Who's Back. I've talked about this movie on several occasions previously. It is a comedic satire which basically goes, okay, Hitler's back. He's returned in modern-day Germany. Just pop, write it down there. And he goes through Germany talking to a lot of people about their problems of the day. And at the time, it was intended to be comedic, like, oh, look at these silly people and their silly concerns. What do you mean, the Islamization of Germany? Ha! What silly willies. It, as a piece of comedy, it aged fairly well. As a piece of political commentary, it aged extraordinarily poorly, except for the final point of the movie, which I won't spoil to you. You should absolutely go watch it, but it makes an exceptional final point. If you look a little bit past the virtue signal, that is. And this is why J.D. Vance is going to meet AfD. He understands that they are the rising power. They are grabbing more and more power within Germany. This political party that the mainstream parties are trying to ban now, I think the latest number was that they represented something like 20% of the German population or something. Okay, so the Bundestag seats, state parliament, yeah, like, there you go. So 16, 20% maybe, or like that. that is a significant portion of the German people that are currently having their right to representation threatened by the mainline parties, largely because those mainline parties have over the years maneuvered again and again to try and bar it from gaining any seats and any power, which yet again simply just makes the party more interested in gaining power. If you block them from getting into the Bundestag, then people are simply just going to assume, okay, we're just going to have to vote for them harder then, aren't we? Because the problems aren't going away. The politicians that J.D. Vance yelled at the European meetings, hilariously enough named Weimar Plus, by the way, they're not producing any solutions to the problems. They're not fixing anything. Their inaction is only making things worse, and the fact that they themselves have the balls to name themselves after one of the least politically stable periods in Germany's history, after a period that demands books like this be written for it, you know that those European politicians that Vance yelled at have no idea what's going on in their own country. They are so thoroughly separated from the average German at this point to have no inkling as to the problems they are facing. They have literally locked themselves in their very own ivory towers of the EU, etc. And now that a foreigner comes to them and goes, "You've got to stop this, and I have the stick with which to force you," they can only really react with impotent outrage as he passes them by and goes directly to their competition. Anyways, we wandered a little bit off the point here, but CBS, dumb, very dumb. No, the Holocaust was not caused by free speech. Indeed, Weimar Germany had a ton of restrictions on speech, and it only made the solution to the problem worse. Deal with your issues today, because you don't want to see the solutions of tomorrow. This is a lesson reinforced again and again throughout human history. Listen to it. Until next time, I have been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.